welcome the audience to the first scientific session of Bharat Nutrition Week on behalf of Integrated Health and Wellbeing Council. And the theme of Integrated Health and Wellbeing Council is good food, good air, good water, which are prerequisites for health and well-being. The food emerges as a key priority area, though all these three are closely linked to our health and well-being. So this week, and I compliment Integrated Health and Well-being Council for giving due importance to this week. And all of you are aware that in the month of September, Government of India celebrates it as Poshan Maah. So the whole month is devoted to highlighting importance of nutrition in our life, and the contribution of Integrated Health and Wellness Council is to celebrate Bharat Nutrition Week and bring together about 100 experts to talk about different areas and help the audience in taking the right decisions on that. So we had our Honorable Minister of Social Justice who came and talked in the inaugural session, and recently, if you listen to Man Ki Baat of the Prime Minister, he highlighted the importance of nutrition and many new initiatives. He announced that we will probably have a nutrition card for every child, and we will also have a nutrition monitor in every neighborhood to help improve nutrition status of the citizens of India. Unfortunately, the previous Prime Minister said it is a national shame that we have such a large number of malnourished children in our country, probably the largest in terms of number and also probably the largest in terms of proportion. So there have been recognition of this problem, but the new government started a few new initiatives. One is National Nutrition Mission, National Anemia Mukt Bharat Abhiyan, and many similar initiatives to give importance to nutrition in improving life of citizens of India. When you look at nutrition, you have the whole spectrum. On one end, you have undernutrition. On the other hand, you have overnutrition. And both of them together are malnutrition. Malnutrition is not just the undernutrition. It is both undernutrition and overnutrition. So whole spectrum. We need to look at what happens across the spectrum and make sure that all of us stay in the middle with appropriate nutrition and how we can do that. So we have renowned experts on our panel. I was looking at their background. All of them have been associated with work in India and outside. So you have global experts who will be sharing their experience with all of us so that we can become better nourished as individuals, and in our community and a nation as a whole, we can improve nutrition indicators, and nutrition is the foundation of health. If you cannot have good nutrition, you cannot have good health. And to start with the ancient wisdom, there is a mantra in Atharvaved which Mr. Athavale also referred to. I will recite the whole of it. Tachakshuru devahitam purasta chukra mucharat jivema sharda shatam jivema sharda shatam pashyema sharda shatam shrunayama sharda shatam prabravama sharda shatam adina syama sharda shatam bhuyascha sharda shatat. I should live for 100 years, not just longevity, the quality of life. I should have good vision. I should be able to perform all my duties. That will not be possible unless you take care of nutrition. So for both Sharirik and Mansik Swasthya, nutrition is very, very important. Poshan is very important. So with that, we move to the panelists. We have Dr. Suju Datta. She is Director of Quality and Food Security at Akshay Patra Foundation. That foundation doesn't need any introduction. I'm sure all of you know that. Her background, she is a food technologist and a lead author by profession. She has more than 25 years of rich experience in food industry, right from research and development to manufacturing to quality assurance. She currently heads the quality and food safety department of Akshay Patra. She has been an entrepreneur as well. For 4 years, she ran a bakery and confectionery cafe. So he has grassroots level experience, and she has been earlier associated with Cafe Coffee Day. She has corporate MBA. She knows how to run organizations, and I'm sure that has spilled over to how to run food and nutrition related program with focus on quality. She has been a trainer throughout and continues to be a trainer for food and related areas. Over to you, Dr. Suju Datta.
Thank you, sir. Anyway, thank you for the introduction. About the one is, of course, Nutrition Week, Nutrition Month. This was the need of the hour, especially with the COVID striking us. A little bit of Akshay Patra, like you said, most of the people are aware of Akshay Patra, but just a little on that. We have 55 kitchens. We run in 12 states and 2 union territories. We run the midday meal program and on the ICDS, which is the Anganwadi school meal program. And main thing is people actually look at us as a more of a welfare agency than just providing food. So that's somewhere Akshay Patra over this 20 years has built up the reputation and the faith and the quality deliverables. So we are at this stage here. So we have been providing food about to 1.8 million children per day to about 18,000 schools. But with the COVID-19 coming in, everything just went to a complete halt, and we ourselves didn't know what to do there because the schools just kept shutting down. But there, over like from April, we had this one thing. Many of the governments and donors approached us because we have these huge kitchens with us. So they requested us, is it by any chance possible for us to run some nutrition-based program or at least food security-based program? Could we provide food to at least those migrant workers, those laborers, and people in need of food? So Akshay Patra did rise to the need, and I'm pretty proud to say that within the next 3 months, April to June, July, within the next 4 months, we've been able to feed about 70 million meals. So that's a good thing. We've been able to help on food security. But that, of course, is not enough because we are still concerned about the children, because the schools are still not open, though most of the governments, they are looking at, whether the schools can be open in the next 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. But we also share the same concern that what has happened during these 3-4 months. We've been providing, as per the government MOUs, we have been providing certain amount of protein, certain amount of calories. But what has happened during this 4-5 months? So just to make good about that, what we have done is we have started this take-home ration kits. See, cooked meals was a challenge always, and employee safety was our concern. So we have very good ISO standards, but still, with this COVID-19, employee safety, because social distancing has to be maintained, though we had hygiene, sanitization, all those things in process, social distancing was a major challenge for us. And mask, we always had the hair cover, the mask, the gloves, all that we had, but social distancing was a concern. Even then, in Rajasthan, in Karnataka, about 50% of the kitchens we did serve cooked meals to the people, with maintaining all those standards which had to be, put by with the COVID pandemic coming in. But again, now what we have started doing is we have identified schools, thanks to the headmasters, thanks to the state governments. So we have started take-home ration kits or the meal kits. So we have a portion kit of rice, wheat, some pulses, some dals, and ragi flour. And then we have some oil. Vegetable was a concern. So we had started only those long-lasting vegetables like your potatoes or your cucumbers, that only we could do because we couldn't do fresh vegetables. So we are trying and giving a ration for a month and helping out onto the food security. But yes, millets. This is something which we also want, and we want the government to, like, we in the midday meal sector, we have rice and wheat being provided by the government. But our concern is, can we have millets? Millets is so rich in micronutrients. It's rich in, of course, macronutrient of protein, but also like iron, zinc, calcium, magnesium. So we have this continuous dialogue with the government, whether in different kitchens or in different states can we provide millets through the schemes, through the midday meal schemes. Another thing which we are looking at, which we are doing also, is food fortification. Macronutrients, to a certain extent, actually a lot of agencies have come together even during the pandemic and all that to at least give the basic needs, but that's more of only carbohydrates. It's more, even the government, like most of it is only rice and wheat. But what happens to the micronutrients? So that spectrum is not being covered, and hence we are looking at, whether micronutrients also can be done, and that's why we have this food fortification at Akshaya Patra. Staples are the easiest way. 70% of our population consumes rice. So can we do? So what we are doing is we are doing fortifying them with iron, folic acid, and vitamin B12. So this, if it could be taken by the government in a PDS scheme, they have started actually in some states, a small such an initiative has started, but it has to go all across, so that through the PDS scheme, through the public distribution scheme, through ration cards, if we can do some sort of a fortification with micronutrients, it would help a large part, especially for the malnutrition. The undernourished, like you said, malnutrition is both the sides of the spectrum, but I'm talking more of the undernourished. Because what we see, most of the government school children, which is where the midday meal scheme is for, most of them are undernourished or malnourished, in the undernourished or underweight or stunting or wasting, that sort of thing, which is seen more across. Another thing which I would like to say is this national education policy, which has come, sir. So that brings about breakfast. Now, breakfast, all of us are aware, breakfast is the most important meal of the day for, especially for the children, where focus and attention is required. So as of now, there is not so much of attention because we provide midday meal, which is a lunch. And to many, we have seen that is the first meal of the day. But that's not sufficient, because that's at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, 1:30, depending on the school timings. But if suppose the breakfast is provided, so there could be more focus and attention even by 9:30, and then the first half of the day, they also pay attention, as well as the post-lunch. Because even when we did survey, we have seen that the first half people are not so attentive, and sometimes they just come for lunch, and post-meal, there is a more attendance in the schools. So that's something we're looking at. If at least breakfast, the government takes more initiative, food fortification, some supplements, iron and folic acid supplements, if it is given to the children, adults, even adults. We are not talking only about children, though I'm a part of Akshaya Patra. But yes, we cover Anganwadi, where we cover even lactating mothers and very smaller infants. So if these micronutrients are provided to them, then at least we can see some amount of control and food security happening, nutrition security happening to the children. So this is something which I think the government has to do. And of course, from Akshaya Patra, we have already started food fortification. And we are looking at breakfast programs. We are with the NEP coming in, or before that itself, we are looking at initiating the breakfast programs as much as possible in many of our kitchens. So this work on providing, another thing, nutrition education. As much as possible, we go out to the schools and give nutrition education, not only nutrition, of course, other than that, on personal hygiene, sanitization, everything else. And now with COVID, this is more and more important. Most of the places we were not able to try, and even now there is a concern on cooked midday meals, is because of this solely, whether people have PPE kits, whether masks can be provided, whether children, can they do social distancing? It's very difficult to control children. They're so, robust and energetic, and they would, come together. So how do we bring about that? So that is something we're looking at, educating them, ensuring that, after every day they disinfect the rooms, ensure that social distancing, masks, toilets, hygiene, sanitation, especially in the government schools, hygiene, sanitation is a concern. So this is where we are looking at providing education to the children, to the cook cum helpers, so that we can maintain whatever, protocols are required, especially during this pandemic. So that's And also another thing on the other side of the spectrum, like how FSSAI is bringing in for those carbonated food drinks and beverages, higher tax on high sugar, high salt, high fat, will definitely cut down on that, will dissuade the manufacturers to go in and come in for more healthy foods, and maybe incentivization for people who are into healthy segments. That would help the other side of the spectrum, and we would have a balanced diet with more of nutrition security. That's my take, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Suju. I got 4 carry-home messages from you, if I can repeat them. One
please.
is that you are providing services. हिंदी में बोलूं तो 2 करोड़ बच्चों के लगभग आप दे रहे हैं, which is itself a great achievement. And the second message I got from you is the world is changing, and many times the changes are not to our liking. COVID struck, but that did not stop you. You moved your capacity to provide meals to 7 crore migrants. 7 crore meals were provided to the migrant, and you used your capacity till schools open up. But you didn't wait for schools to open up. You adapted take-home packages for the children so they can continue to benefit from your program. Second carry-home message is, you as an NGO have been doing a great work, but your work is unfinished if the lessons learned from your work are not scaled up in the country. So you are helping government to scale up the good practices you have been implemented in your area through initiatives such as micronutrient fortification of the midday meal and other programs the government is running across the country. Third message, nutrition education is sustainable. The children may go out of the school. The schools may close down, but if you give them nutrition education, they will continue to benefit for the rest of their life, and what you want will be sustainable and will be sustained. And practices such as hygiene and sanitation, you need clean food, you need clean plates, you need clean hands. And then after eating, you need to clean your mouth. Otherwise, food residues in the mouth will make your teeth decay. So these are the 4 cleanliness messages which are part of nutrition.
And I want to end up with, sir, that online learning is possible, but online eating is not possible.
Very right, very right. The 4th message, there is a huge manufacturing private industry. Unless you influence them, they will maybe bypass the rules and regulations, may at times even go into unethical practices, but they need hand holding. You have reached out to them. So that was the 4th take home message. I wish we could eat online, but as you said, that is not possible. So we have to be in the real world to improve nutrition. So with that, thank you so much on your very useful presentation and the key messages. So in the session which is on hunger and overeating is killing equality, and how do we bridge the gap, we have the next expert whom I am fortunate to have been associated with for last many years. I have known him, which he continues today as advisor to the Government of India Ministry of Health on Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyakram, popularly known as RBSK. He also continues to be professor of neonatology, and recently he moved to head neonatology department of All India Institute of Medical Sciences at Jodhpur. His interests continue in advanced neonatology, community neonatology, early childhood development. And when I talk to him about early childhood development, I have met some of the leaders in this particular area, but it was really enlightening for me to discuss early childhood development. He has many firsts to his credit. You know, you don't have to be in a private sector like Hemaji is fortunate. Even in government sector, you can do wonderful things. He has, to his credit, the first breast milk bank in the country in a government setup. He is the one who had set up the first institute of neonatology. He has conceptualized and led establishment of 6 newborn care units, which are being established in every health facility across the country. And also the first early intervention center called Samarpan. He is the one who conceptualized and established those centers. He is also international faculty in University of Oslo in Norway, in a university in Washington, D.C. He has more than 50 publications in areas which are very important for all of us to learn. And as I said before the session started, I consider him as walking encyclopedia on health and nutrition. Anything on health and nutrition you want to know, this is the right person. And I'm very grateful, Dr. Arun Singh, for sparing time to join us. So with that, over to you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. You have always been very kind to me. But let me be very honest. I will share my experience. I don't call myself an expert. I'm still a student learning. Now, I just carry forward from the previous session. And the previous session, I was amazed at one line. The Western world always wants to understand at an atomic and subatomic level, breaking things into various parts. The Indian philosophy was always, you understand that, but join it. The comprehensive approach, see the total picture. I think when we talk about nutrition, very honestly, why should it be a doctor who should be speaking? Why should it be a nutritionist who should be speaking? I think everyone, because it impacts a very, very comprehensive way. Now there are 3 words which I am going to bring. Poverty, malnutrition and intellectual development. आप इन तीनों शब्दों को जब भी देखेंगे, भारतवर्ष एक गरीब देश है. We are a poor country. Second, we are malnourished. And third, we are intellectually not advanced. Is this 3 a syndrome? Are we genetically less than the rest of the world? Is this an association? Or do we think that this is a sequence? When I say sequence means, if you change one, the others would change. If you address nutrition, your country will become rich. Do we believe in it or not? If you address nutrition, your intellectual capacity will improve. Do we believe it or not? If we believe, then nutrition has a different significance. And I think this approach of a third world country, first world country, second world country, I asked to myself, मैं तो बहुत बाद में इस देश में पैदा हुआ, but this country has a huge history. Why did people come to this country? Why did the Portuguese came? Why did the Dutch came? Why did the French people came? Why did the British came? Why did East India Company came? We were not a country of diamonds and gold. Let me be very honest. There are countries in the world which have far more diamonds and gold than. So what is it? If I start from the 15th century, Vasco da Gama, he came for spices. What was it? Because India's soil could grow the best, it gives a new taste. And then to beat the Portuguese, by trying to bypass them, came the subsequent. So try to understand, food was our strength. हम कैसे third world बन गए? If you see the entire Awadh belt, we were growing the best food you can think of. The British writer, he writes that taking Indian soldiers to fight, they are physically far more advanced than a British soldier. Not only they are well nourished, they are tall, they have a capability to work far more. So, and with less diseases. कभी जमाना था कि British used to come here to say that if you have TB in England, go to India, you will get cured. So what has changed? I think we ask the fundamental question. Nature has provided India with enough capacity to feed the entire world, forget about this country. But again, three terms: undernutrition, hidden hunger, obesity. The West teaches us these are three different areas. I think Sir just said these three are very much interwoven. You have to just change your specs. Don't see it with the Western world. I'll give you one example. The most obese mother will give the most intrauterine growth retarded child. Obesity is a very important reason for giving birth to low birth weight children. How do you account for it? There's a direct relation. Even nature tells you there's a relation. The mother's overnutrition never leads to the newborn being born with more. And this is global picture. You go to USA, you come to this. So between this undernutrition and obesity, what is the connection? The connection was the hidden hunger. Now see, what did we see? I give you one example. Learn from the tribes. Where were they getting the food from, the tribes? The tribes in India were getting the food from nature. There were less of cereals. I'm very happy, madam, that you talk of millets. We talk of food fortification. What about the nature who has fortified the food? And I'll tell you, nutrition is not something only to be seen as weight and disease and COVID and non-COVID. That is a let's draw the broader vision. In Mexico, there is one of the oldest tribes which can be compared with India, is the Maya tribe. There's a beautiful research went that the Maya tribe, when they were hunters, they used to eat corn, they used to grow corn, but they used to eat a lot of other foods also from the millets and the micronutrients. Then slowly they changed their dietary habits. They started consume the highest amount of sugar aerated drinks. Highest. Now what have they become? They have become diabetic, they have become obese, they have become overweight, they are lazy, they are gambling. The gambling is also because now they can't do hard work. So you see how the whole country's perspective changes. And now we are getting the same corn into a packeted food at a much higher cost, where neither the farmer is a gainer and neither the people. So what am I driving at? I'm trying to say some very simple things. There was a Jamaican experiment where they took children and they said, don't only give nutrition to the body, give nutrition to the brain also. So they took very malnourished children in a ghetto, and they had 4 groups. एक जिनको उन्होंने अच्छा खाना दिया, एक जिन्होंने उनको अच्छा खाना दिया और दवा दिया, एक को खिलौने भी दिए, कहानियां भी दिया, खाना ज्यादा नहीं दिया. When they followed this, 2 generations later, they found the group which they had told more stories. They were the one who were far more employed, far better off. So food is number one, is not less important, but food has to be given. Now see, how do we consider, Indians consider food? When you talk to a nutritionist, the food is protein, carbohydrate, fat. आपने कौन सा खाना खाया है जो आप प्रोटीन, कार्बोहाइड्रेट, फैट लेके? आज का जो आपने नाश्ता किया है, did you know how much protein you take out? So in Indian sense, we say Gyanendriya, Gyan plus Indriya. You smell a food, you see the food, you see the colors, you see how it is plated. आप होटल में ज्यादा खाना खाते हैं क्योंकि होटल वाले जानते हैं कैसे खिलाना चाहिए. The protein may be the same, the fat may be the same. When your mother cooks the food, the very smell makes you appetite. And this is very, very important for feeding a child. When mothers come and complain, "Mera bachcha khana nahi khata hai," they just don't know that they are trying to feed something which they think is protein, carbohydrate, and fat, but which requires. So you learn while you take food. The point I'm trying to make is few simple suggestions. Suggestion number one: why does this country, instead of only talking of cereals and rice and wheat, also grow fruits, vegetables, which is the most important, which will lead to better cognition? Extra rice, extra wheat may lead to a pot belly, may satisfy my belly hunger, but will not satisfy my cognitive hunger, which is linked to micronutrients, which we have said the hidden hunger. Iodine is required, iron is required. You give iron, it is not only anemia. There is two kinds of things: iron deficiency with anemia, iron deficiency without anemia. It is the iron deficiency without anemia which has a far more role in the cognitive role. That means if I am not anemic, doesn't mean I am not suffering from iron deficiency. My ferritin levels can still be. लोहे की कढ़ाई में हम खाना खाते थे. Why do you want the country to be fed with iron tablets and etc., which nobody would like? हम गुड़ खाते थे, which had so much of iron, and now we are talking of the white jaggery, which we have borrowed from the West. I was going in Gujarat. Now they sell the milk. They sell the milk. The children do not get it, and they buy some kurkure. So आप सोचिए, जिसके घर में गाय है उसके बच्चे को दूध नहीं मिल. So I think it is a change in the approach which we will have to do. The rationing system should change. We should not only encourage rice and wheat. What about ragi? Or you say ragi is a South Indian diet, I'll get you an equivalent of ragi in Bihar. Why they are not getting encouraged? Green vegetables, fruits. I see the whole of Awadh belt. Every few kilometers you will find a different taste of a green vegetable or a fruit. People would eat it. And I think that is very nutrition, because if I see the evolution curve, the Homo habilis and the Homo erectans and then the Homo sapiens. The Homo habilis had 500 cc brain. We all have 1500 cc brain. And there's a lot of research what in the diet changed so that the IQ improved or the brain size improved from 500 cc to 1500. And one of the key factors is food. But it is not the food which fills your stomach. Madam, I'm so fascinated. This is the research I had done. When you said that breakfast, just imagine the word breakfast means breaking the fast. So actually I did it in a school in this entire experiment was carried out, that instead of the same money which was giving as midday, if I can give a breakfast to the newborn, to the school child, his concentration, focus, and the very reason why he was in the school improved. So, these are the things. हम जब weaning करते हैं, from breast milk after 6 months we wean. We wean with a very sweet fruit, sweet diet. Either we give this milk and lot of sugar and this. Now, if you feed sugar to a young child, infant, you are addicting his brain to high sugars. If you feed a young child with lot of salt, you are addicting. And the two twin diseases, hypertension and diabetes, you have got his brain addicted. The same part of the brain which gets addicted to let's say cocaine, the same part of the brain gets addicted to high sugar and high salt. Can we tell every mother? Now coming back to COVID, see, the most important thing in this nutrition is, nutrition बैठ के नहीं खिलाया जा सकता. And sir is very right. I still am not happy sitting and teaching. Neither the student should be sitting, nor the teacher should be sitting. Tagore opened a whole university, and the university was under a tree. He said, if you have to learn about rain, go and wet yourself in rain and feel how the rain is, rather than reading a poetry in it. So I think those people who talk of nutrition should start growing in their district. Hospitals, schools should start growing micronutrients. इतने सारे फल हैं. I was told that the drumstick, जिसको आप इंडिया के हर भाषा में कोई ना कोई नाम है. हिंदी में उसका नाम सजनी का डाटा है, गुजराती में उसका नाम है, साउथ इंडियन में है. Imagine the amount of micronutrients it carries. मेरा हाथ जोड़कर ये निवेदन है सबसे कि let us not make food and money and business apart. Food is something which is our offering to nature, because nature is God. हमें nature से ही जो मिला है उसी को बचाना है. And India really knows not to fill the tummy but to fill the brain. एक बच्चा जब पेड़ पे चढ़ के एक फल तोड़ेगा, it will never be the same when you give it him in a plate in this. When he climbs the tree, his brain, his activities, his physical activities, everything is there. So I wish we still had children who in their school's yards would have a lot of fruits. They would climb, they would break it, they would eat it, they would enjoy it. And the trees would also like it, because they will help in the spread of growing more of that fruits. So I stop here, and my only thing is that India is not a poor country, neither poor in terms of money, nor poor in terms of nutrition, nor poor in terms of knowledge. I think the knowledge is most. Once there is an awakening, there will be no looking back. Thank you, sir.
So you're on mute.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Arun Singh. There were so many pearls of wisdom we got from your brief presentation. I don't know if I can capture all of them, but I'll try to capture some of them. One is, you went to ancient India and ancient Indian culture. The foreigners came to India because India was rich. It was known as Sone ki Chidiya, a place where there was lot of wealth and prosperity. I will take you even before that time, when we had people from neighboring countries coming to India for education. Nalanda and Takshila were the famous university. Unfortunately, when the barbarians came to attack India, they burnt all those universities. Some of the books are available which have been translated into Chinese language, because many Chinese scholars got their education at these universities, but we lost out on that. You also found a link between overnutrition and undernutrition. You mentioned that obese mothers are more likely to give birth to a low birth weight baby. So this is not two different worlds. We need to look at them together. You also mentioned that don't look at nutrition and food as something to fill the stomach. Look at it more holistically, to look at how are we feeding the brain. And you talked about early childhood. The taste, the most important period for a child to develop taste is 6 to 9 months, when the taste buds get formed and the food preferences and dietary behavior is set for the rest of life. We have moved to giving them artificial foods like sugar and high salt food, and many manufacturers, infant formula manufacturers, have come up with follow-up formula. The child doesn't get used to eating the family food, though his practices change to undesirable dietary practices. And you gave a very good example of giving food and mental stimulation to the children, and those who are given both, they are the ones who do better and are better nourished in life. Moving to the traditional practices, as Dr. Suju Datta also mentioned earlier, breakfast is the most important meal. So let's start looking at how can we give a more wholesome breakfast to the child. And then if you have a sustainable practices in place, the tragedies like COVID-19 are not likely to derail the whole process. Growing foods. I remember when you were talking about children plucking things from the trees. I grew up in a small town called Hisar in Haryana. There were trees all around, and there was 15 minutes break after third period. We will all run into the neighboring garden, climb the trees, pluck the fruits and bring them back and distribute among our friends. Before the gardener came and caught hold of us, we will make a quick dash to that. And we knew all the fruit gardens around my school, and we used to go there. Many times the owners were kind and they let us eat what we wanted to, but that practice has completely disappeared. My father used to take us for picnic to the farms near our town, and the farmers were very happy to feed us whatever they were growing. Let's connect back to nature. So with that, I know I have not done justice to what you said, but this is what I have to say in summarizing what you said. So with that, we move on to another eminent speaker. We have Dr. Sunil Rajpal. Dr. Sunil Rajpal, may you look young to me, but he has a wise head on his young shoulders. Currently Assistant Professor of Health Economics at IHMR University in Jaipur. He has a PhD from Central University in Gujarat in economics. He was earlier with the Institute of Economic Growth, and the next speaker is currently working there with Dr. William Joe is there, where he was working as an ICSSR doctoral fellow. His research interests include health economics, maternal child nutrition, development economics, and demography. He has also done a lot of research in elderly population, which is receiving more and more attention in India. Health. He has published extensively in reputed journal. His work currently is targeting strategies under health and nutrition plans and programs in India. With that, over to you, Dr. Sunil Rajpal.
Thank you, Sanjeev sir. Yeah, so I have just started learning, so I want to point out right now. And being from a non-clinical background, I will try to talk very few minutes just from the policy perspective and not from the clinical perspective. So, if we talk about policies perspective, so yes, COVID-19 induced disruptions have actually, affected the nutritional status, not just of all the, socioeconomic strata. If we talk about the poor children, but if you also talk about the people, those who are in the middle socioeconomic strata. Because as rightly pointed out by eminent panelists that, the reduced physical inactivity and what the theme is there. So with the onset of COVID-19 outbreak and the ensued policy response which we are seeing, the restrictions which we are facing right now, for example, I used to go to canteen at least thrice in IHMR's canteen to drink tea. And to have some talk with the seniors to talk about them about it, to learn. But that's not happening because one-to-one meetings and the group meetings are not allowed, and I'm just sitting on the chair meeting everyone. So yes, the physical inactivity will also cause the nutritional setback for the rich section also. But I would, from the policy perspective, I would like to point out here that if we see from the vulnerability perspective, it is the poorest strata who is right now the most vulnerable. So, if we talk about BMI also at macro level, we can see the prevalence of, low BMI is 23% among women aged 15 to 49, and it's 21.5% prevalence of overweight and obese among females. So at macro level, the prevalence is same. But we look deeper to the socioeconomic patterning, there is a clear gradient, and the gradient is inverse in both the situations. The prevalence of overweight in obese is among the better off, the affluent section of the society. And, the prevalence of low BMI and the undernutrition is more towards poor. So if we talk about from nutritional vulnerability point of view, I think the poorest strata, the poorest strata, those the families, those who are surviving, in normal times they survive at bare minimum wages. So that section of the society is right now as the most vulnerable situation, if I have to point it out. So we did some research also on this. So we try to understand the consent. It's not just the cutoff we look at, the simple anthropometry measures what we conventionally see, the prevalence of underweight and wasting, but we also should look on the concentration of children around the vicinity of the threshold by which we are defining the underweight. So the borderline children, those who are at the borderline of the nutrition, they are are at the most risk of getting into the trap of undernutrition in the current distress times of COVID-19. So in the research, what we did, we tried to do a sensitivity analysis to answer a very, very empirical question, like what is the sensitivity of body weight shock to the prevalence of underweight in India? So if we reduce the sample children, the weight of the sample children by just 0.5%, which across the age domain ranges from 30 grams to close to 100 grams. So if we reduce the weight of the only poorest 20% children, how much of the prevalence underweight in India will increase? So we ran some numbers in an FHS sample, recent order FHS sample, and we found that even a minor shock of 0.5% reduction in the body weight can increase the prevalence of underweight by 1.5%, which will translate into huge numbers looking at the population base, the child population base of India right now. So at now, what I will focus on at this juncture, I think from the policy perspective, the targeting is very important, and the targeting should be precise and towards the poorest of the poorest strata right now. All the government and private and NGOs, the targeting is very important. The identification of the at-risk population is the first thing towards, so far I've learned. So I think at the policy front, we should identify which population is at risk, as the most at risk. Then, of course, with the, then for the, I think the nutrition education and the awareness is equally important. And this is more important for the middle class of the socioeconomic strata. Where now they are moving and channelizing their purchases through online apps, and they are sitting at the home, and everything is available sitting at the home. So they are the ones who are experience the transitioning from a conventional going out to the market, and now from purchasing online. So they will be in the better off sections. They will be at risk of experiencing perhaps the overweight and the further challenges, the health challenges, the chronic diseases lies ahead. So I think I will. So these are the only 2 points which I had to share with you. The panelist, rest is over to you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil. Again, I would say wise head on young shoulders. You brought out two very important issues, and I am glad you moved to the policy dimension. The earlier expert had given very good insight, but you brought in a new angle of looking at policy, how the shocks, COVID was one shock, how the shocks to the society affect the nutrition status. And I am glad Suju Dattaji mentioned that they started targeting the migrant who had lost their job, their daily wages, there were no earning, and they targeted that. So very important for policymakers to look at whom do they target with these interventions. And this emerged from both the presentations of the speakers. The next one you mentioned is nutrition education. Nutrition education is very important for everyone, but more so in the COVID shock, when many people who can afford have moved to online shopping. But he gave you a statistical perspective. I am one person who looks at real life, having worked at primary health centers and dispensaries in the urban slums. Even in the well-off, you have undernutrition. Don't feel that well-off don't have undernutrition.
Yes, sir.
Even in the poor, you have overnutrition. I remember one of my colleagues did a study in the poor neighborhood near Malviya Nagar. He found obesity in women was higher in the poor than in the better off neighborhood. So it's not that. So they will eat more of food and grain. Ration gives you that. As Dr. Arun Singh said, it doesn't give you fruits and vegetables, which are source of micronutrient, other things. But you got a lot of rice, you got a lot of wheat, you overeat, and then you become obese. Even the program need to look at that. I saw that in Iraq. Iraq had sanctions. So they stopped importing fruits and fresh vegetables. Most of these were imported before sanction. They started giving them rice, wheat, oil, spices, but they couldn't get under oil for food program. They couldn't import vegetables and fruits. Obesity went up to more than 50%. But at the same time, micronutrient deficiency was also very high. So you had a situation. So there are no two different worlds of overnutrition, undernutrition. You may be overnourished for one nutrient and undernourished for another nutrient. So we need to look at that. So thank you so much, Dr. Sunil Rajpal, for your valuable inputs. Now I move to another young shoulder with wise head on on those young shoulders, William Joe. I have had the pleasure of interacting with Dr. Joe in my previous job. He has a very good insight into health and nutrition related issues. He is currently working as assistant professor in Population Research Council at Institute of Economic Growth in Delhi, a renowned institution in the field of health economics. He is also affiliated with Harvard Chen School of Public Health, one of the best universities and best public health schools in the world, as Bernard Loan Scholar. He has a PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University, one of the top universities in India in the field of economics. His research interests are in health economics, demography, development economics, and program evaluation. And he will bring very useful insights from his experience in program evaluation. Currently, he is providing technical support to maternal child nutrition, to Ministry of Health, Government of India, Niti Aayog, Tata Trust, and UNICEF, United Nations Children's Fund. And I met him in a few meetings in UNICEF. He is also involved in monitoring of National Health Mission, which is the largest mission anywhere in the world. So over to you, Dr. William Joe, for your insight into the topic of this panel discussion.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this kind introduction. Let me begin by congratulating the Integrated Health and Wellbeing Council for organizing this Bharat Nutrition Week. I would also like to thank them for inviting me to join this distinguished panel on this interesting topic and very, very much policy relevant area for discussions. I think we should start by acknowledging the fact that the Poshan Abhiyan has brought about a much needed synergy in the field of nutrition. I think it was a long understood problem, but the momentum which Poshan brought into this was very critical. It's a great mobilizer, and the concept of Jan Andolan, which is basically a nudge to have people come together and work right across government, non-governmental organizations, as well as the corporate sector. So it's a very important push and has highlighted the policy relevance of nutrition issues. So this, I think I should congratulate the government on taking this important step. And as Sanjeev Sher was also mentioning about some of the recent announcement by the Prime Minister, basically like the plans to go much more deeper micro level with the school-based nutrition report and nutrition monitor. So these are important initiatives because people should know what is nutrition. They should understand whether they are well nourished or not. More importantly, like mothers or families, they should understand that whether their child is undernourished or not, and how to assess that, how to read that, how to improve that. Until unless we have greater awareness around this, it will be very difficult to actually address some of these problems, because part of this is poverty related issues, but the other part is also behavioral and awareness related issues. So on this account, I think we are on the right direction, and there is a great momentum to work on nutrition and improve nutritional health in the country. As we know that the challenge for India is rather complex. much of the initial discourse was around undernutrition. So we were more concerned about poverty and whether people are getting enough to eat or not. And that had impact on their productivity and their outputs, including education and all. Over the years, I think there has been an increasing burden of overweight and obesity in the country. So if you look at like numbers, you will find that about 20-25% of women in the age group of 15 to 49, they are underweight. But a similar number of women, 20 to 25%, they are equally overweight or obese. So the challenge is now at the both end, which we call as the double burden of malnutrition. Now, to add to that, in recent years, I think we are having an increasing focus on micronutrient deficiency, like iron, vitamin deficiency, calcium, folate deficiency. So there are a number of micronutrients which the population is found to be deficient in. So children, for example, about 1/5 of children are found deficient in vitamin A, vitamin B12 and all. So this is important area. When you add undernutrition, overnutrition, and the problem of micronutrient deficiency, we get something called the triple burden of malnutrition. So India has all these three problems simultaneously occurring within the population and even within a household. You will find people who are underweight plus micronutrient deficient, those who are overweight plus deficient from a micronutrient perspective. So this problem is at an individual level, at a family household level, or in a community level. So this is a major problem. Some of the major challenges that we had over the years was because our diet and preferences, both because of our economic capacity as well as our socio-cultural norms around food and our habits and preferences are shaped in a way that we consume a lot of cereals. Now, the data which we see is that about 70 to 80% of our calorie comes from a cereal-rich diet. Whereas if you will look at some of the accepted guidelines for balanced diet, they argue for a better component of proteins, healthy diets, fruits and vegetables, dairy products. But these things are currently not found in the regular typical Indian diet. This is partly because of the availability issue, partly because of our poverty issue. But I think this is something which we have to address. There are a lot of outcomes which is actually linked to equity aspects, like Sunil was also mentioning. The rich-poor gap in quality of diet is very high. The dietary diversity, what a child should eat or what a family should eat, it's a huge in India. The rich are able to eat a little bit of fruits and vegetables, but the poor are totally deprived of any fruits and vegetables. Now these things has to be understood about why the behaviors are like this. Is it an income problem, or is it a preference problem, or is it both? So these kind of issues are actually which we need more focus around. I will now straight go to aspects related to policy. I think Dr. Datta initially had mentioned about the role of schools and improving the quality of meals in the schools. I think that is very critical. I would like to highlight two issues related to that factor. One is the policy side. Now we know that nutrition is rather complex. You have the education system involved in this. You have the health system in this through the Anganwadis especially. So managing the convergence between these three ministries is a key area. And if you want to execute a certain program, how it has to be operated, what kind of program monitoring has to be done, these are like serious policy issues. And we find that despite like our ICTS has been running for close to like more than 40 years or so, but the impact that studies have noted has been very minimal. In fact, some find negligible impact. So how to improve impact, how to improve our program delivery is a very important area. That I think there are like a lot of emphasis. Government is also worried about that, but then the solution has to come from somewhere. And I think that is something which all nutrition community should work together on. The other aspect I would like to highlight is that this is a critical opportunity to not only link our food systems with the quality and quantity of nutritional health, but it has a very significant backward linkage with the agriculture sector. I think our diversity, our diversification of food, as like Dr. Arunji was also mentioning about this, we have to diversify our food basket, and it has like tremendous potential, especially if you will look at the agricultural sector, where we don't have this kind of production, where like entire production is tilted towards cereals or pulses or towards sugarcane. But we can rectify that balance. But for that, we need a demand. And I think government should initiate these kind of activities to promote demand for quality, healthy foods. And I feel that like schools and Anganwadis are a good initiators where we can trigger the demand as well as try to improve the preferences towards healthy foods in our economy. So with those few words, like I think we are at a point where we should also understand that if you are investing $1 today's time in nutrition, the country is going to benefit from $20 more with that single dollar. So that is at least a lower baseline estimate. I think there is a lot to be gained from investing in nutrition. So I think government should go ahead and invest significantly, try to improve some of this program, and especially look at the agricultural linkages associated with a good diet and dietary diversity. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. William Jo. And you rightly highlighted that Poshan Abhiyan and the current initiative of Poshan Ma, or Nutrition Month, and contribution of Integrated Health and Wellness Council on Bharat Nutrition Week are important initiatives to give much desired push, borrowing your word, much desired push to improving nutrition and engaging all stakeholders. We need to look at policy, poverty, but also look at behavior, which you mentioned is very important. And we are facing the triple burden. You also mentioned very important aspect of investing in nutrition, which will impress the politicians and bureaucrats. Every $2 investment gives you 10 times more returns. So with that, I thank all of you. Each one of you brought out very important areas, and I'm glad I was able to meet some of you in this panel face to face. So 2-3 key messages have come out. One is we need to look beyond poverty and undernutrition. We need to look at behavior. And Dr. Arun Singh highlighted early childhood is very important. When you expose the child to the desirable food items so that the child develops the desirable dietary practices in early childhood, rather than exposing him to high sugar and high salt food, which stay with him for the rest of the life and exposes him to various nutritional disorders and various health conditions. From NGO side, great job. They are reaching out to a sizable proportion, but it is also important, as Suju Dattaji pointed out, that whatever you learn as good practices, these are taken up to the government, and government scales them up in the whole country. Targeting, Dr. Sunil Rajpal highlight, is very important. When you have nutrition programs at policy level, we have the right targeting of population. As again William Jo's carry home message in the conclusion, there is a very important need for all ministries to come together rather than working in silos if you want to improve the nutrition of the population. All policy related issues need to be addressed in a comprehensive manner by integrating all the ministries into one approach. Thank you so much to the audience and all the expert participants.
Thank you so much,
it was great listening.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.